Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here with the 189th episode of Book of Hours, playing as the librarian for our first time on YouTube. I just had a little bit of dinner, so I am hoping you are not treated to the sounds of it re-emerging while I stream. But again, I've been recording this a little bit ahead of time of the actual release, but I wanted something to take my mind off things, and Book of Hours does a wonderful job of that. So today we have a few things on our to-do list. So first of all, we do want to bring in Mrs. Kill for a source of memories. We've already leveled up what was it? Edicts Inviolable. So what we're mostly going to be playing around with today will be it's going to be the earthquake names from Old Moments. And it will probably be... I mean, maybe we can try and get the Forbidden Epic. I should think about that. But yeah, our focus really is going to be to just try and get a couple of things to... to make some ingredients with. As far as the menacing phosphorescence is concerned, I think I need to wait for the... for autumn for that. And then I suppose in a pinch we can always just make some money. So we'll do the fixing and mending. There's not much work on offer in Brand Crew, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. And then if we're really strapped in terms of things to do for the next day, we can always go to the moor and Crowcross Sands. But I think today is really going to be a good opportunity for us to see how the how some of our, I don't know, I'll call it the to-do list of recipes works. If nothing else, that'll sort of constrain a few of the remaining recipes. So, for instance, the Forbidden Epic is something I'd kind of like to learn how to do. And then there is an item I'd kind of like to try and get my hands on, but I've had a couple of other things that I've been working on. So, okay, Edicts Martial. Create the old wound, explore an old wound to awaken the violent resonances within. And then for the old moment, I mean, I really, if we want, we can work with it right away. I think... So my ideal would be something with both... what is it? I need something with scale, but I'm just trying to think what my other ingredient might be. So the ones that have scale, we've got Inescapable Confinement, which is the first edition of the Julian Cosley work. I think that one's got Knock and Winter as well. The other scale one... Well, there's one that we just did, which was 3 rules. Old Lost Music has that. That one's Sky, Rose, and Scale. And I think that's it in terms of what I have access to. So I suppose the question is, if my options are Heart, Moth, and Scale, I've written these down just because I know I was going to be referencing them reasonably soon. So if we have Heart, Moth, Scale, Sky, Rose, and Scale, or Knock, Scale, and Winter, I guess the question is, which of those do I think is most useful in terms of any follow-on work that I want to do? Like, is there something that I want to make? My ideal, I think, would probably have something to do with Nectar, but I don't really think that's an option available to me, so I probably shouldn't be thinking about it too much. Maybe we'll try the Old Lost Music for a start. It's also occurred to me I don't have a Wind in Waiting, so I could probably turn that into something else for me to use later. So the Old Lost Music comes from the Turquoise Hand. And yeah, in a minute we'll start thinking about what we want to make today. So the ideal would be we use all of our elements of the soul to create things for us. Excuse me. There, 'tis and be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill. There's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. Don't have anything I immediately need to do with the Solace in the Rain. Might not be a bad idea for me to actually try and make the chimeric larva, though. That doesn't work. Well, that's something I didn't consider. Okay, so we do have some moth we can work with. I'm not sure if I need the Tryst for something else. I guess I can get by using anything, so what would my alternative here be? It's not a lot of really good ones. I think I'm actually going to use the... or I can't use the Faust here either. Ugh. So... but I can use the metal. Hatch the egg. The oven's warmth can stir this egg to life, but it will take a full day. Hatch an eyeless larva pulsing with moth potential. Resurgences and emergences of the scholar level moth plus an egg creates a chimeric larva. Alright, little unconventional, but there is a specific plan. Part of it is really just clearing out the obvious steps for like chances to learn new things. Alright, as they used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. So we'll turn this into a moneymaker again. It is summer. I'm sitting on the bench outside the Sweet Bones, eating crumbly cheese and nettle wrappings and good black rye bread, soaking up the sun. The Turquoise Hand, a calligraphic manual of Ramsund, which employs as exemplar text Farid Udin's Conference of the Birds. At noon, the sun moves like the beating of a wing. At sunset, he sends the herald child with her candle. At midnight, he sends the wind that extinguishes the candle flame. Commentary, illustrations, and interleavings carry revelations never intended in the original, a sense of history and the senses of histories. Now, this is not really relevant to what we're doing right now, but one thing I sort of neglected to talk about just because I wanted to get the Edicts Inviolable in. I don't believe the Chancel and Calyptra are dealt with in the earlier game, in Cultist Simulator. I think that is new for Book of Hours. And in my view, it makes sense because, of course, you have the branches of the Watchman's Tree and so on. But I think the ideas of things like Chancel and Calyptra, they're a neat one because there's a few different ways people will react to these interesting worlds that get created. Move gingerly while the pain lasts. So, sometimes you'll want to go to a wiki and see every detail that you can about the world, or maybe what you want to do instead is see the creators create a bunch of new material. So I'm sort of thinking here, right, you like Game of Thrones, well, what do you know? We've got House of the Dragon to give you even more about this world. Now you get to hear about everything that happened before the events of that show that you liked. That sort of thing. And, there will also be different reactions to it. So I think, in the case of Dune, there seems to be I think people have a clear preference for the, the original books than the later ones. Although that may just be a reflection of the company I keep. There we go. Sorry, I just got a notification. But in the case of Book of Hours, I actually think the expansion that happens in this game is pretty interesting. So in one sense, you can just say, hey, you like secret histories, well, we'll give you some more of that. But I also sort of feel that it's also starting to get into some of the territory where the world can maybe sometimes become a bit less interesting. So I liked John Wick. I think probably of the ones I've seen, I've only seen the first three. The first movie was probably my favorite out of them, although that's not a knock on the later ones. And I think one of the things that caused the later ones to fall short of living up to their potential was that I think they showed a little bit too much of the secret world, and ultimately it wasn't as interesting as it was when it was something that was hinted at. And I think one of the ways that Book of Hours has avoided this is it's still only given you these little fragments, but on top of that, they're starting to go into some of the material which in other stories you would actually see it covered as a maybe even in a first story. So I think when you're dealing with sort of a world of magic and the ability of people to either cast spells or do these sort of powerful world-shaping things, you do have some questions like, well, what does that world look like, and how do you achieve a balance of power or whatever? And I think kind of one of the really interesting implications in Weather Factory's Secret History setting is that the world looks exactly as it does today, right? It's just that, if you're someone like me, you're completely unaware of what's going on in the background. And if you are someone who is aware of what's going on, if you're one of the know, if you're the initiate, then you do start knowing, the different histories, the very significant divergences between them. About summonings and so on and so forth, but there are also sort of institutions in place to keep that from getting out of hand. So, and it's a simple one. I mean, it's not even really the first time anything like this has been done, but it's a nice one. It's a nice perspective on it, right? That there isn't actually all that much different if you're not among the initiated, but if you do know what's going on, there's a lot that you can see. In my view, the reason why I like this is just it's a lot like playing the game. But then you also have this idea, it's like, well, how do you, I guess this is like the Men in Black problem, right? How do you keep word from getting out? And I guess, for lack of a better term, you have the Chancel and the Calyptra and the institution of the Watchman's Tree and all of that. That's basically like the little flashy thing in the Men in Black, right? You have a set of people who are allowed to know, and it is considered a useful thing that there be people who understand this and can manipulate it. It's why the Suppression Bureau isn't necessarily hostile to every form of adept, as long as they play by the rules. But then there are also things which very specifically keep word from getting out, and the world is structured in such a way. And sometimes too you'll have these big shifts that are happening, and sometimes it is questions of the various powers gaining the upper hand or not. But a lot of that is, so that to me specifically, this idea of why don't more people, I mean, this would be an example, right? The Chancel and the Calyptra are an answer to, well, why don't more people know about this stuff? And the answer is because there are very specific rules that even the powerful in this world need to follow, and they would change it if they could, but they can't. And so I just sort of think that, I don't know, I'm a bit of a sucker for rules, I think is what it really comes down to. So anyways, I didn't want to make that too much of a digression, but I did want to talk about it because I was too busy putting things together, and I knew I would be heading down the earthquake name rabbit hole. So I think actually adding the earthquake name... Oh. So for dorsal, there are scale liquids. 3's probably the best I can do here. cod liver oil is clearly the 6 scale drink. Yeah, I'll settle for that. I mean, we're already quite high. Yeah, so no surprises here as far as the Inks of Power are concerned. That's a bit of a special one. I am surprised that Pentiments and Precursors is my next highest scale. I've really neglected that. Okay, so we already knew what we needed from there. Hill and Hollow surely should give an earthquake name, yeah. Okay. Now this is an interesting one. So we've got everything that we need, and yet we're not at the top level. So even being able to identify some of these to say, okay, we thought we knew everything about scale, but it turns out there was one that we couldn't quite capture. I think that's worth investigating. What I am curious about is if I were to take Serpents and Venoms, because it would seem to me that probably Serpent Milk is the most likely max level. Yeah. So some of these are kind of right themselves. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to double check and just see for anything that's got a scale aspect, do we know the top levels? So we do not yet know the top level for Inks of Power. I'm willing to guess that that's probably going to be Houndsgall. So we'll work on that. Pentiments and Precursors we do know, so we have all of the scale. Should have checked this while I was doing this, but okay. Now there's no guarantee, it doesn't actually say that there has to be 3 of each. It just happens to be that's the way it works for most of them. And as I'm sure you've noticed, my usual routine is to focus on the pattern, focus on the one that seems kind of the most reliable in terms of producing an outcome. So again, I would maybe expect there to be Houndsgall from Furs and Feathers. Although we probably should have found that already. And then from there, you know, we can just narrow it down to the exceptions. So I will find a scale altar that will take a pet. I guess I didn't really think about whether or not I could get the interesting. Okay, we definitely tried to get the Houndsgall out of all of them, so that suggests that there's another scale recipe that I am missing out on. So we've tried to get the earthquake name. I guess it would maybe be Serpent Milk. So this doesn't let me add a liquid, but the kitchen range would. So if I add an earthquake name, health, well, it may let me add a liquid, but it's almost certainly not going to let me add an ink. Very unpalatable. Okay, but the Noctunary might. Yes, okay. But that doesn't accept scale. Interesting. This is a trickier problem than I originally appreciated. I do think the Forge takes scale. So yeah, we could put the Perunculate in as fuel there. So again, we're really just focusing here on seeing if there's more that I can do with Perinculate that I didn't appreciate before. I don't think there's a scale version of this. Or no, hang on. Serpentinite, of course. Okay, still no luck there. It's furs and feathers that I was looking for. Interesting. Okay. So this is going to involve a little more thought on my part, I think. But it's good to know that we still have a scale mystery to work with. All right, that was not intended. Now, I could try to make the Forbidden Epic, but I think I would actually have a prerequisite for that first. Now, if I want... Oh, you know what the funny thing is? I was adding the old moment. I still haven't done anything with that old lost music yet. Okay. So the tricky business I have now is... I was thinking of trying to put together the sky music. So I'll do that old lost music just for... was it Wind and Waiting, I think it was called? So I might as well put a Faust in place. So I'm pretty sure Furs and Feathers accomplishes that. That's Ascendant Harmony. Interesting. Oh, right, because I don't have enough... Right. There is a fix for that. We go to the workbench. So I have to have the fife for that one. That is the key. Well, let's stick with what we know. So we'll do Furs and Feathers. We are too short. Sadly, the Solace doesn't give us what we need. And none of these do either. Nuts. Okay. I'm trying to remember which of these gives me the Wind and Waiting. This actually shocks me that we haven't been able to work up. Oh, because it's... yes. Sky and Moth. If I did more Moth things, I'm sure I would be less shocked. I don't think glassblowing and vessel crafting would be the fix here. Okay, so it is the Wind and Waiting here. I'm reluctant to pull the trigger on this. I think I'd actually like to... Actually, one thing that I can do later on in the day, in fact, I can use my Whist on this. We can bring in a proper thunderstorm, and that's because I'll get 4 and 4 out of that. That seems to be a far better use of the Whist than anything else I could use it for in my exploration here. So we will wait for Mrs. Kill. She might give us a couple of other things. I should actually also work on... Let's maybe see if we can do a bit more... Well, hang on. What am I trying to do here? This may be a little foolish, but how do I even approach this? Trying to think right now about I want to use something like Auroral Contemplations to get a... Actually, I don't need to get that clever. Disciplines of the Scar may do the same thing for me. Okay, that's an old moment, so that doesn't work. Now that's interesting that I haven't done anything with the edge yet, so... Interesting. That's probably waiting for a leaf, actually. So what I'm really looking for is a way to get a winning move. Now, what I was originally thinking is we use Auroral Contemplations. But then the question is, where do I get the remaining edge from? And the answer to that is basically I get it from a Newman, which is not currently available to me. So yeah, we'll wait this out. I know this has been dragging a little bit. I've been talking a bit more than doing the gameplay, but what I'm trying to do is not waste the daylight. If I get a chance to try and make some of this stuff, I want to have a clearer game plan. All right, the thread parts. The weave is empty. The skies cry out. There it is and can be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from Rats to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. I might change it up and bring Mr. Kill in. The catch is that it does take a whist to bring him in, which is a potential source of funding. Now, the fact is we've never really used that, like, the Arab or the whist almost never is the decisive factor in terms of earning the money, but I always kind of pretend that on the margin it does. It's like voting, right? You're never going to be the decisive vote, but still vote as if you're the decisive vote. All right. Let's go. I think I'm willing to put the time in for... Oh, you know what? I think I still have problems here because I can't add memories. Now, if I could add a tool to one of these altars, I'd be better. In fact, I think the telescope saves me here. It does. Okay. So if we use the telescope with the Mazarine Fife, that lets me take the Storm and the Old Lost Music. From there we can take Furs and Feathers. Doesn't even have to be the Faust, if I'm honest. And maybe I avoid doing that. I'm just trying to think. I can see a lot of value in keeping the... Actually, I can probably put the Fed in. Yeah. So I do want the Wind and Waiting, but what I am going to do here is just take a second and see if I can... Okay, looks like if the Sky Stories already has it, then we're good. So Wind and Waiting will just be another tool I can use. Now, I think I'm probably going to go for an edge. I don't know, an edge... Lantern and Edge would be my favorite, but I think probably the Edge Newman would be the trick. Although I'm trying to remember, I know there is one, but I actually don't think I have one in the list. No, the Bells of Ys does, but the Bells of Ys doesn't have Lantern. Am I okay with that? I think I am. So for that, I think I'm willing to give up a whist. So for that, we need to read the tablet. And this one is in Fucine, I think. Yeah. So this is going to be my path to the winning move. And I'm not sure I'm really going to get anything that I couldn't already get from the Invincible Audacity, but it's just a box I'd kind of like to tick. I do have intentions for this Consider verb, but I am actually starting to run out of elements of the soul, so I'm holding back. There's not much work on offer in Brancrude, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. Right, there it is, it could be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but the scant trace of the continent in her accent now. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. Okay, with Keeper level Moth, perhaps I could coax this to develop further, as long as it's well fed. Chimeric larva approaching the chrysalis crossroads. So it's not hungry. One thing I could do is just see what kind of mothy things I can do to this right now. I think the old moment... Well, the old moment doesn't do as much as I was hoping it might. Bells of Use I don't think will help here. I think it's Rose is the one other than Forge. But let's see if we can maybe get away with a couple things here. Because I do also have the Skin Shuck Mead, although that may not count for much here. Cuckoo Honey does something, though. So I don't know, we go Old Moment, or Hive's Lament. No, Hive's Lament doesn't give me anything else. Okay, so the Tryst gives us a start. Yep, so Perilous Imago. Maybe just take the time to make sure that any of our... So what I'm trying to do with these is I'm just trying to clear out the ones that are... Like, sorry, I'm trying to get rid of sort of the false mysteries, is probably the better way for me putting it. So we don't expect the inks to actually do anything, but it doesn't hurt to test it out. Essentially what I want to have is anything that's a question mark because I just didn't bother to test the recipe. I'd prefer to have those out of the list so that I can focus on the things that really are mysteries. So for instance, this may still be it. Like this may still be something that I want to try and level up. It's really just a question of could I find a moth that's could I find a 3 moth? And right now the answer is no. Maybe when I have a Newman, I can try again later. There may even be an alternative setup. Well, no, in this case not really, because I'm always going to have the chimeric larva. But yeah, this is the sort of thing that I'm looking to sort of knock out of the list. Anyways, I think we'll leave it there. I will likely be able to record at least one more episode. I know I'm starting to run out of time, but I'm looking... Ideally, I'd kind of like to get this slow bit while I'm testing different recipes. I'd kind of like to get that out of the way, and then we can focus on the book, which I'm anticipating we will get before too long. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.